I don't know if it's TS Holos, T Sholos. It's TSHOLOS is the Instagram name. Question: you've discussed the approach to training athletes in competition. And although that is more of what Max seems to do, I'd like to get his take on approaching training for GPP Gen Pop in an affiliate setting, in parentheses, a 1-hour group class, for example. Some topics like strength and metcons done in the same class versus on separate days, linear strength progression versus using a strength day mixed into programming, use of accessory work, most overused, underused thing in most CrossFit affiliate programming. So I do coach elite athletes. I've also done a lot of general health and general physical preparedness training over the course of my career. I'm going to start with the specific things that you asked about. So strength and metcon in the same day, I think that's fine to do. I think you just need to put it in context. So if you do a metcon post strength, whatever fatigue you impose on the nervous system, on the structural system, is going to play some sort of an impact in what the execution of that specific metcon is. Conversely, if you do a strength piece after a metcon, whatever residual damage you have from that metcon, so if your diaphragm and respiratory muscles are really tired, that might destabilize the spine a little bit and make some of that strength a little bit more risky or maybe a little bit more stressful to the system. I consider that all fine, so long as it's done safely with good technique. There's a purpose behind the program. Your athletes or general health clients know what they're doing and why they're doing it. If they're going to compete in the CrossFit Open, then they need the ability to do strength after some sort of a maximal effort energy mixed modal energy system piece. So giving them exposure to that through the year is something that's necessary. So I don't know if I have any thoughts on that other than I think it's probably good to have variance in the structure. Some days all strength work. Some days just metcon or energy system work. Some days where you blend them together. Some days where you blend them together in different ordered pairings. And I think all of that will lend itself towards a generally physically capable person who can deal with all sorts of different types of fatigue. Second point you said, linear strength day versus, versus a quote unquote strength day mixed into programming. I'm not sure what that means, a strength day mixed into programming, other than what I think you're asking is that you have an alternative where you pick, let's say, a powerlifting movement. So we're going to use a back squat. 1 week, we're going to do a percentage at 70%, then the next week, 73%, the next week, 76%, some sort of structured progression, a taper, a deload, some undulating periodization, whatever you want to use, but some form of linear progression. Or I just decide to put powerlifting in at some point throughout the training program. I don't think that really matters too much for general physical preparedness. Now, if somebody was a strength athlete that needed to get better at a specific movement, then having some sort of progression built in to make sure they're getting better is necessary. Now, whether that progression is linear or not, I think is dependent upon how people adapt, how frequently. If you're going to put that day on a Monday, for example, is your gym demographic going to be there on Mondays all the time? Because if somebody doesn't come on Mondays and you have strength pieces only on Mondays, does that mean that their general physical preparedness training is no longer going to have that specific strength discipline in there because they only show up on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays? And that's why answering these questions about group programming without knowing the specific group that you're talking about, what that demographic is, what their goals are, why they want to get better, it's kind of difficult to give advice, but I think both have their utility. If I'm going to use linear progressions, I need to make sure that the goals of the athletes that are in that group are to make sure that whatever the lift that I'm progressing is something that they actually want to get better at. I don't know if most people, if they just want it to be generally physically healthy, really care if they PR their deadlift or their back squat. They might have other goals that relate to body composition, pain management, mobility, ability to play sports. Like, they have a bunch of different goals, and I'm not sure that that one would be the one that you have to hyper focus your training around. Point 3, accessory work. I'm not really sure what accessory work is that you put quotes around, because I think of something like a snatch balance as an accessory movement to improve the snatch, but I'm guessing that what you're saying accessory work here is isolation bodybuilding style training, or unilateral training or rotational based training. I think that's something that does need to be in everybody's program, whether it's a warm up, whether it's a cool down, whether it's literally just accessorizing or pre-fatiguing a muscle or post-fatiguing a muscle after you had just put it in a more complex movement. I think it's something that should definitely be in the design. Most overused or underused thing in most CrossFit affiliates, I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm involved in some mentorship with some CrossFit gym owners. I've coached people in the sport of CrossFit for a period of time, but I haven't really, there's tens of thousands of affiliates, and each one of them has their own way of doing things, their own demographic, their own equipment limitations, their own space limitations. So I'm not really sure that I can provide any knowledgeable advice on that. The one thing I might say is that I think too many people that use CrossFit as their base fundamental general physical preparedness training rely on categorizing strength as a barbell. Then those are your points. I guess the things that I kind of wanted to get across, the thing I see in a lot of general physical people's training is that they just don't have goals. So that's the number one thing, is sit down with your members and make sure that you have some sort of an idea what they actually want out of the training, because the training has to be a program that leads them somewhere. And if you don't know where they want to go, then you don't know if that training structure is actually going to lead them to how they define general physical preparedness. Integrate more play, whether that's games, fun warm-ups, different types of challenges, different ways to keep people engaged emotionally in what they're doing. Spend more time on developing movement complexity. So a lot of people will tell you as you start to age or as you start to get injured to make things more simple. I'd kind of advise against that, and instead of trying to force people to do complex things, give them a training program that allows their movement complexity to increase over time. Add and spend more time on the basics. Like, a lot of people want to do kipping handstand push-ups, kipping muscle-ups, kipping chest-to-bar pull-ups, but don't spend a lot of time on hollow body positional work, arch body positional work, and just some of the basic fundamental skills that are required to move well when it comes to gymnastics. Give more education to your people, whether that's education on lifestyle, nutrition, health, movement quality, whatever it is that allows them to actually improve what they're doing outside of the gym. Because if they're coming to you 5 days a week for an hour, that's 5 total hours out of the week. All of the other 23 hours a day on those 5 days and 24 hours a day on the other 2 days is time that they could spend getting better physically if they understood what they should be doing to support the physical work that you're prescribing. And then the last thing I'd say it's probably just more encouragement to play sports and use the physical preparation to do things and sporting activities, whether it's flag football leagues, pickup basketball leagues, golf, tennis, 5K racing, just something that gets you engaged with a social community of people that are racing and figuring out how they can get better and faster and accomplish more endurance or strength-based tasks. So I think that's kind of all of my thoughts summed up on the programming for a group affiliate model for GPP versus what I would do with my competitive athletes.